You've probably heard that storytelling is an important skill, especially for leaders. It's a skill that has many benefits for leaders. In particular, it helps leaders build closer connections with people, change people's minds, and inspire people to action. These are three important benefits that I talk about in my other video, why storytelling is important for leaders. But a more practical question is, how do you build your storytelling skills? And to answer this question, I wrote my book, The Story Habit: How Leaders Shape Stories That Drive Action. And note the title, it's Story Habit, not skills. And there's a good reason for this. Skills are built on top of habits, and habits are much easier to build than skills. And if you start by building the right habits, you will naturally develop the right skills. So in this video, I'm going to share with you 4 of the story habits that I talk about in my book. Habit number 1, notice change. This first story habit that is of great help to the skill of telling a story is to simply notice change. Because a story is never about something normal. It's always about a change. And every day we experience plenty of changes. Our train breaks down on the way to work. Our bank accidentally deposits a large sum of money into our account. Or the wind blows our hat away. But the thing is, we rarely notice those changes. They just pass us by and we forget about them. But if you pay a bit more attention, you'll find a story in there somewhere. So here's a challenge for you. Reflect on everything that happened last night. Somewhere in there is a story. What story can you find? Once you start noticing more of the changes that happen in your life, you'll start building your story pool. Then, the next time you have an opportunity to share a story, you can try out that story you saved recently. And guess what? It won't be perfect. Still, to this day, despite everything I know about explaining things, about training, and about storytelling, when I try to explain something for the first time, or tell a story for the first time, it's not amazing. It might just about get the message through, but it's rough, it's long-winded, the points are not clear, I repeat myself too much, I have to re-explain certain parts, and so on. But the second time is better. The third time, even better, and so on. Don't expect to get things right first time. Expect your stories to fail somehow, and then improve on those failures. And eventually you'll be standing in front of a room full of people, and they'll be hanging on every word you say as you suddenly pull out that story of the time your train broke down on the way to work, or when your bank accidentally deposited a large sum of money into your account, or that time the wind blew your hat away. And the skill in that moment all came from that simple habit of noticing changes. Habit number 2, relate before challenging. The second story habit is to relate to people before you challenge them. Something that happens on a daily basis in the workplace is conflict. It can happen on a minor scale, such as polite disagreements, or even escalate onto a major scale and lead into a fully blown argument. At the heart of conflict is the simple fact that we each believe in different stories. For example, I once worked with a luxury brand with 2 teams that were always at each other's throats. The business development team were responsible for finding new locations for their retail outlets, and the other team, the sales team, were responsible for selling things in those retail outlets. Almost habitually, every time the business development team proposed a new location, the sales team would complain, saying they wouldn't be able to make enough sales there. Then a big argument would start, the BD team would accuse the sales team of not doing their job properly, and the sales team would accuse the BD team of exactly the same thing. They had different stories about those same retail outlets. And the most fundamental storytelling skill of all is the skill of relating. Think about it. Every story you've ever read or watched or heard, on some level, you could relate to. You could relate to the characters and the situations they found themselves in. And when there was a story you couldn't relate to, you lost interest. Before a storyteller tells a story, they must first learn the stories of their audience. They must understand what experiences, beliefs, and motivations have shaped their audience. Only then can they relate to their audience. This is how companies like Disney make so much money from their stories, by doing a damn good job of relating to their audience. It's exactly the same in daily life, especially when we face any conflict. So the second story habit of relating before challenging works like this. Whenever you have a disagreement or conflict with someone, simply ask more questions about their perspective. This immediately de-escalates any conflict. It shows respect to the other person, who in turn is much more likely to respect you back. But much more importantly, this helps you understand their stories, which then makes you more able to relate your story back to them. Habit number 3, challenge the right people. Another story habit is to challenge the right people. The challenge is the middle part of any story. We're first introduced to a character in a situation that we can relate to, and then they meet a challenge. Ultimately, this challenge changes them, and in turn, will change the audience. Stories are extremely powerful because they can change people's minds, and in some extreme cases, they can actually change history. Like how Harriet Beecher Stowe's novel Uncle Tom's Cabin contributed to the end of slavery in America. Stories do this by challenging people's existing beliefs and presenting new beliefs that serve them better. But here's an important and overlooked principle when it comes to changing people's minds. You can't change everyone's minds. For example, probably one of the most impactful presentations in recent years is Steve Jobs' 2007 iPhone launch presentation. It introduced the iPhone to the world, which in turn went on to change the world. And if you watch that video, you'll notice how the audience loved everything about Steve Jobs. Throughout it, people are cheering and clapping and just generally reacting with all-round astonishment. But think about it. Who was in that audience? Clearly, it's not going to be mostly Motorola, Nokia, or BlackBerry executives. No, it was made up of die-hard Apple fans. That's why there was so much cheering. Apple carefully selected their target audience. And when you want to persuade people, you also need to carefully select your audience. So for this story habit, when you want to persuade multiple people, focus first on those who already somewhat agree with your idea. Don't focus on those who are impossible to sway. Focus on those you are most likely to successfully persuade. And if you do, maybe they will help you win others over too. And the final story habit in this video is to regain awareness. From the earliest days of our species, we have used stories to teach others. We go out into the real world and gain experiences, and then through the power of story, we are able to transfer our experiences into other people's minds. This is one of the reasons our species has gone on to have a much bigger impact on the world than any other species. And as a leader, there are going to be things you need to teach others to do. Things you can already do that they can't. But have you ever noticed how hard it can be to teach others some things? For example, a common challenge is giving your staff feedback about communication skills. Maybe during monthly reports, they just go on and on and on without getting to the point. So you tell them, I need you to get to the point faster. But no matter how many times you tell them this, they still can't do it. And you know the reason? Because even if you are good at getting to the point, you probably don't realize how exactly you get to the point. And how can you teach someone if you don't know how to do that thing in the first place? The challenge with being good at something is that you become so good you don't have to think about it. You just do it. If you had to think about it, you'd slow down. As a result, you lose awareness of how you're actually doing things. We all know someone like this. Maybe it's our resident IT expert, or that neighbor who's a scientist, or even that friend of ours who's really into crypto. We know they really understand these things, but whenever we ask them to explain it to us, it's like they're speaking a foreign language. This problem is known as the curse of knowledge. The deeper you understand something, or the more skilled you are at something, the harder you will find to explain to others. So for this final story habit of regaining awareness, all you need to do is observe yourself in action. For example, you know you're good at getting to the point fast. So how do you do that exactly? The next time you go to give a presentation, notice the points that you make and get curious. What exactly are you doing in that moment? What are you doing leading up to that moment? How are you doing it? And so on. The more awareness you have of how you actually do something, the easier it'll be to explain to others. My goal with the story habit is to make it the most practical storytelling methodology for leaders at work. A methodology that is easy to master and easily fits into your daily working context. And as I mentioned at the beginning, the easiest way to master skills is to start with the right habits that will help you grow the skill naturally from there. So in this video, we've looked at 4 story habits to help you develop your storytelling skills naturally. Those habits are: number 1, notice change to help you find stories to add to your story pool. Number 2, relate before challenging to help you better relate your story to others. Number 3, challenge the right people to increase your chances of successfully changing people's minds. Number 4, regain awareness to help you more easily teach others how to do things. If you're interested in learning more about the story habit, then I have lots of free resources for you in the description below. You can download your free story habit story guide, or even take my free How to Tell a Story online course. Check it out down below. And if you found this video useful, a like and subscribe would really make my day. Thanks for your time, everyone, and have a great day.